Rome had already seen blood. 3 days of sweat-soaked clay, rackets scraping the baseline, crowds gasping at every disputed call. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared the Foro Italico for what unfolded between Coco Gauff and Alex Iva on that brutal Tuesday afternoon. This was not a tennis match. This was a reckoning. The kind of match that gets referenced in locker rooms for years. The kind that changes careers, shifts rankings, and rewires the mental blueprints of everyone who witnesses it. So let us go back to the beginning, before the first ball was struck, before the first serve was tossed, before the two women even walked through the tunnel and into the roar of the Roman crowd, because to truly understand what happened on that court, you have to understand the invisible psychological weight that both players carried onto it. Coco Gauff is 20 years old and already a veteran. That sentence alone should stop you in your tracks. She turned professional as a teenager, made her Grand Slam debut at Wimbledon when she was 15, and the entire sporting world collectively lost its mind watching this kid from Atlanta play tennis like she had been doing it for decades. Since then she has carried a level of expectation that would buckle most adults. The press follows her everywhere. The rankings follow her everywhere. The number 3 beside her name on the draw sheet follows her everywhere. She is supposed to win. Not just advance, not just play well, she is supposed to win and win convincingly. And there is a very specific psychological trap that comes with being the favorite, especially against a fellow American, especially on a stage this big. You cannot afford to underestimate. You cannot afford to overplay. You cannot afford a single lapse. The margin for error is brutally, unforgivingly thin. And then you look across the net and you see Alex Iva. 22 years old, ranked 16th in the world, and walking into this match with an energy that can only be described as dangerous freedom. She had nothing to lose. That is not a cliché, that is a tactical reality. When you are the underdog against the world number 3, the math already suggests you should lose. So every game you take, every set you steal, every point you rip from the hands of the favorite, it is pure profit. And Alex Iva knew that. She had studied Gauff's game. She understood the patterns, the tendencies, the way Gauff likes to stretch rallies and then explode when the opponent gets slightly off balance. Iva walked onto the red dirt not with caution but with a very specific, very calculated plan to blow the whole thing up from the jump. And she executed it immediately. The first 30 minutes of this match were genuinely jaw-dropping. Not in a polished, highlight reel kind of way, but in that raw, chaotic, stomach-dropping way where you can feel the upset brewing in real time. Iva was taking the ball impossibly early. We are talking about contact points that most players would not even attempt in practice, let alone in a round of 16 at a premier-level tournament. She was flattening out her ground strokes, removing all the spin, all the margin, and just drilling the ball into the deepest corners of the court with the kind of conviction that said I have done the math and I am willing to live and die by it. Gauff, for the first time in what felt like a very long time, looked genuinely disoriented. And then came the moment that sent a shockwave through the entire stadium. Iva went on a 10-point winning streak. 10 consecutive points against Coco Gauff, the player that coaches around the world use as the reference point for elite defensive tennis. Her court coverage is almost inhuman. Her ability to retrieve balls that other players would wave at is a core part of her identity on the tour. And yet Iva made her look slow. Made her look reactive. Made her look like she was always one step behind the geometry of the rally. Those 10 points were not lucky. They were not flukes born from net chords and wild shots. They were surgical. Iva was reading the angles before Gauff even hit the ball, positioning herself to pounce, and then delivering with terrifying precision. The first set went to Iva, 5-7. And in that moment, the entire press box leaned forward. Phones came out. Notifications were drafted. Because what had been a theoretical possibility was now staring everyone in the face as a very real, very imminent reality. The world number 3 was one bad service game away from a headline nobody wanted to write. The second set is where this story gets genuinely complicated, and genuinely beautiful, depending on which player you were cheering for. Because what unfolded was not a comeback in the traditional sense. It was not Gauff suddenly unlocking another gear and overwhelming her opponent. It was messier than that. It was grittier and uglier and far more human. Both women were playing with their nerves on the outside of their skin. The breakpoint statistics from this match are almost absurd when you lay them out. Across 3 sets, Gauff created 13 breakpoint opportunities. Iva created 10. That is 23 separate moments where a service game was under direct threat. 23 moments of maximum pressure, maximum adrenaline, maximum consequence. And both women converted with alarming frequency. Gauff broke Iva's serve 8 times. Iva broke Gauff's serve 6 times. 14 total service breaks in a single professional match. 14. You almost never see that at this level. The serve is supposed to be the weapon that sets the terms of the rally, the tool that gives the server the first strike advantage, the thing that separates professional tennis from the version we play at the local park on Sunday mornings. But on this day, on this heavy, grippy, slow Roman clay, against 2 world-class returners who had both done their homework, the serve was basically irrelevant. Every single game felt like a street fight. Neither player could hold with any comfort. Every service game was a grueling referendum on nerve and endurance and the ability to handle chaos without completely unraveling. And in the middle of all that chaos, a very quiet but very decisive pattern began to emerge. Gauff was making 1 double fault. Iva was making 10. That gap, that specific, devastating gap, is the entire story of this match in one statistic. Let me put it plainly. Coco Gauff, under 3 sets of brutal, relentless pressure, with the crowd buzzing and the stakes climbing and her opponent playing the match of her life, committed exactly 1 double fault. 1. Her service motion, which has been picked apart and analyzed and criticized by everyone from former champions to weekend warriors with a YouTube channel, held firm like concrete. She kept her first serve percentage at 67%, which meant she was consistently starting rallies on her own terms, dictating the first strike, controlling the geometry of the point before Iva could impose her own. That is not glamorous. That is not the kind of thing that ends up in a highlight reel. But that is the difference between a Grand Slam champion and a very good tennis player. Alex Iva, meanwhile, was living through a slow-motion nightmare on her service games. 10 double faults. 10 rallies that never even started, 10 points handed directly to the player you are desperately trying to defeat, 10 moments where the mechanics just gave way under the pressure. And you have to understand why those double faults happened, because blaming it on nerves or technique misses the deeper truth. Iva knew, she absolutely knew, that if she hit a safe second serve, something loopy and conservative that just got the ball in, Gauff's footwork would do the rest. Gauff would step inside the baseline, she would take the ball early, and she would punish it. So Iva felt compelled to go for her lines on the second serve. To keep hitting with pace and depth and spin even when the margin for error was razor thin. She was playing redline tennis because anything less than redline was a guaranteed free point for the opponent. That is a psychologically suffocating position to be in. Every single time she missed her first serve, she was staring down a choice between a comfortable second serve that would probably lose the point anyway, or an aggressive second serve that carried a very real risk of the net. That kind of math does something to you over the course of 2.5 hours. It erodes you. It chips away at the mechanical certainty that professional tennis players rely on. And you could see it happening in real time, Iva's toss getting fractionally lower, the arm getting fractionally slower, the racket face closing just a millimeter too early, and the ball sailing long. Meanwhile, Gauff was locked into exactly the kind of match that suits her, even if it did not look like it from the outside. She is most dangerous when the match gets physical, when the rallies get long, when the legs start to burn and the lungs start to ache, because her conditioning is genuinely elite. She does not just beat opponents with her racket. She beats them with her ability to maintain quality when everyone else's quality is declining. And that is precisely what happened in the third set. Iva had played herself into the ground. The explosive, flat-hitting aggression that had made her so terrifying in the first set had taken an enormous physical toll. The split steps slowed down. The footwork became slightly reactive instead of anticipatory. She started reaching for balls with her arms rather than moving her whole body to meet them, and that is the first sign that a player is running low on fuel. Gauff sensed it immediately. And she changed absolutely nothing about her game plan except the intensity with which she committed to it. She stopped chasing winners. She stopped trying to end points early. She just started hitting the ball heavy and deep and making Ila hit one more ball, one more ball, one more ball, until eventually the quality of Ila's responses started to slip. 5 consecutive games went to Gauff in the third set. 5 in a row. That is not a momentum swing, that is a dismantling. That is one player imposing a physical reality on another that simply cannot be argued with. The final set scoreline of 6-2 does not tell you about the tightness of those early games, the desperate saves, the double-handed backhands ripped down the line that caught the chalk. It only tells you where the fuel gauge ended up. And when you zoom all the way out and look at the total points, the margin becomes almost heartbreaking for Ila. Gauff won 105 points in this match. Ila won 91. That is a difference of 14 points across 3 full sets, across every service game and every rally and every tiebreak adjacent crisis point, 14 points. The two women won exactly 60% of their first serve points. Identical. When the first serve went in, they were perfectly matched. Same weapon, same effectiveness, same result. This match did not separate itself on talent. It separated itself on endurance, on second serve mechanics under duress, and on the ability to stay 1 degree calmer than the other person when everything around you is on fire. So what does any of this mean going forward? What does this match tell us about where both of these players are headed? Because I think there are 2 genuinely fascinating stories here. For Alex Ila, the honest truth is that this loss should feel like a foundation, not a failure. She walked into a round of 16 match against the world number 3 at a premier-level clay court event and she won the first set. She generated 10 break points. She kept the match competitive enough that, at multiple points in the second and third sets, a single converted opportunity could have swung the momentum entirely. She showed the tour that she has the firepower and the courage and the tactical intelligence to be a genuine threat to anyone in the top 10. If she can build her physical conditioning to match her explosive baseline game, if she can find a way to make her second serve more reliable under pressure without sacrificing too much aggression, she is going to be an absolute problem for every player on this tour. She leaves Rome without a win but with something arguably more valuable, a crystal clear picture of exactly what she needs to work on to cross that last gap. For Coco Gauff, this win is worth more than any routine straight sets victory could ever be. Because winning when you are playing well is just tennis. Winning when you are shaky, when the crowd is sensing blood, when your opponent is hitting the ball like she wants to take everything you have ever worked for, that is the proof of something different. That is the proof of a champion's mentality. She dropped the first set. She faced breakpoint after breakpoint. She watched Ila play with a freedom and aggression that must have been genuinely uncomfortable to deal with. And she found a way. Not a beautiful, elegant, dominant way, but a gritty, grinding, refusing to blink kind of way that says everything about who she is as a competitor. The Italian Open rolls on. Paris is getting closer with every match. And somewhere in the Foro Italico today, on a court covered in red clay and the remnants of an extraordinary fight, Coco Gauff reminded everyone watching that the number 3 next to her name is not an accident. She has earned it the hard way. And she earns it again every single time she steps out onto a court and refuses, no matter what, to let go.